Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Now, let us see heat of reaction. So, heat of reaction, it is the amount of heat that must be added or removed during a chemical reaction in order to keep all the substances present at the same temperature. So, in a pressure vessel containing the reacting system, if it is kept at a constant volume, the measured heat of reaction represents the change in the thermodynamic quantity called enthalpy. So, simply the difference between the enthalpy of substances present at the end of the reaction and enthalpy of the substances present at the start of the reaction, it is represented by delta H. So, suppose you have a mixed constant volume chamber and there is an oxidation reaction that is going on. There will be certain enthalpy of the reactants in the beginning, and now the combustion reaction happens and there will be temperature will increase and there will be certain enthalpy at the end of the combustion. The difference between these two is called delta H, that is the heat of reaction, because that is the heat that is being generated because of this oxidation reaction. So, if the heat of reaction is positive, the reaction is said to be endothermic. If it is negative, then it is exothermic. If it is releasing the heat, then it is exothermic reaction. If the heat is being absorbed, then it is endothermic reaction. Accurate values of heat of reactions are necessary for proper design of the equipment, for use in chemical process, for thermodynamic processes. So, understanding of this value delta H is extremely important if you want to design a gas turbine, if you want to design a boiler, if you want to design an IC engine, it is extremely important. There is a law called Hess's law. Okay, this is the representation of Hess's law. So, it states that the enthalpy change for a reaction that is carried out by a series of steps is equal to the sum of enthalpy change in individual steps. Okay. So, the enthalpy of a chemical process is dependent on the path, is independent of the path taken from the initial to the final state. So, it depends basically on the end points and not how you reach that point. Say for example, if you starting, if you have certain elements, okay. So, suppose there is a set of reactant could be, for example, we took the example of propane. Okay. How is propane made? It is made of carbon and hydrogen. Okay. So, you have carbon and hydrogen here. If you want to make propane out of carbon and hydrogen, you have to put in some amount of energy in it, right. So, that is called delta H F, enthalpy of formation of the reactants. Then this propane, it reacts with oxygen, it gives you carbon dioxide plus water plus heat. So, it is releasing some amount of heat and that is called delta H, that is the delta H, okay, enthalpy of formation. And then you are forming products which are carbon dioxide plus water. So, again carbon dioxide, what is it made of? It is made of carbon, it is made of oxygen, it is made of hydrogen. So, from the elements if you form them, then this is called delta HFP, that means enthalpy of formation of the products. Okay. So, the enthalpy of a chemical process is independent of the path taken from the initial to the final state. Hess's law is used to determine the overall energy required for a chemical reaction. This is the chemical energy required for formation of reactants, this is the chemical energy required for the formation of products, and this is the enthalpy of reaction, heat of reaction. So, this value should be equal to this value plus this value. Okay. Now, suppose you want to calculate this or experimentally measure this delta H, enthalpy of reaction, oxidation reaction, how do you find it out? So, enthalpy can be measured experimentally through a use of a calorimeter. Generally, we use an instrument which is called Bohm calorimeter, okay, Bohm calorimeter. So, a calorimeter is an isolated system which has a constant pressure and it works on this principle. This says delta H equal to Q is equal to Cp Cp Sp, specific heat at constant pressure or constant temperature, okay, multiplied by m, m is the mass, and multiplied by delta T, delta T is the change in the temperature. Okay. So, I would just like to explain this to you slightly better than what is shown here. So, when we want to find out this delta H is nothing but the calorific value of the fuel, okay, heat of reaction. When a unit quantity of fuel is burned, how much heat it will release. So, what is normally done is that you have a constant volume chamber, which is also called combustion bomb. Okay, it is called bomb, but it really does not explode. Bomb means the explosion will take place inside this bomb, and it maintains its structural integrity. So, what you do here is that you take a measured quantity of fuel, fuel could be solid fuel, fuel could be liquid fuel, of course, it cannot be gaseous fuel, there is a different type of calorimeter which is used for gaseous fuel, but for solid and liquid bomb calorimeter is used. And then you take known quantity of fuel and then you fill it with oxygen, only oxygen at say 20 bar pressure, at high pressure. So, now there is a lot of air in it, actually it is enough air to burn it completely, you make sure that there is no carbon monoxide formation. Okay. And then you put it inside a tank of water. Okay. Then what you do through electrical circuit, you put a magnesium wire inside that bomb and you put electricity through it. So, the magnesium wire burns, so that acts as a source of ignition. So, once the ignition happens, there is fuel, there is oxygen, what will happen? Combustion will happen. Combustion happens means there will be a lot of heat release, and that heat release where it will go? It will go to the bomb. Okay. Bomb is made of very thick steel, because it has to withstand very high pressure, and then finally, where it will the heat will go? It will go into the water, and there you have a thermometer which is very precise. Okay. So, what will happen? As soon as the combustion happens, water temperature does not change, and with time, with after some time you see a sudden rise in the temperature, okay, and then temperature will keep on rising as the heat is coming out. There will be a point in time where up to 5 minutes there will be no change in the temperature. So, that means now at that point in time everything is at the same temperature, there is no more heat that is coming out, because the temperature differential has evaporated. So, you know what is the mass of the entire system, okay, and what you actually do is you first find out the capacity of the system. So, for finding out that system, first you put a known fuel, say benzoic acid you take, and you burn known quantity, known calorific value, and see what is the MCP for that system. Okay. Once you know that MCP, you do not change the quantity of water, you make sure that you are not adding 1 drop or extracting 1 drop, because that will change the heat capacity of this system, and then you put your unknown fuel, and so then you find out what is the temperature rise. So, you can calculate Q equal to MCP delta T. MCP is already known to you from the previous experiment, delta P you can, delta T you can calculate, I mean from the thermometer you can experimentally measure. So, therefore, you can calculate how much is the Q, right. Once you know Q, you also know how much is the mass of the fuel. So, you know the mass of the fuel, how much heat it has released. So, then you just find out calorific value of that particular fuel. This is the way in which you can calculate actually the heat of reaction or calorific value of a particular fuel. Clear? So, if you want to calculate the delta H numerically, to calculate the standard enthalpy of reaction, the standard enthalpy of formation can be utilized. And as I said, if you want to calculate this using the element, you can find out how much is the heat of reaction of the products when you are starting with constituent materials minus the enthalpy of formation of reactants. So, this is simply written here. So, delta H not means standard conditions, standard temperature and pressure, 25 degree centigrade, 1 atmospheric pressure, and then you can calculate what is the enthalpy of formation of products minus the enthalpy of formation of reactants, and all these values there are standard tables for these. So, you can just calculate theoretically also. So, Vp is the stoichiometric coefficient of each product, reactants, and delta H standard enthalpy of formation for the reactants and products. You must have done this exercise in the thermodynamics course in second year. Okay. So, I think this is all as far as the heat of reaction is concerned. Now, what we will do is we will start a new topic, which is combustion in SI engines. So, now we are really moving into, so with this background, so far we were doing the background, now we will go to the engine side and real application into engine, and we look at what happens inside the engine. Now, we will switch whatever we have discussed in the background so far. It was applicable to coal, it was applicable to gas engines, to ship engines, to gas turbines, it was basic. Now, we switch gears to IC engines only. So, now all the discussion will be limited to only IC engines. So, if you look at combustion in the context of IC engine, it is a rapid chemical combination or oxidation of hydrogen and carbon in the fuel with the oxygen in the air, resulting in liberation of energy in the form of heat. That is what we want. What are the conditions for combustion in an engine? First is that there should be a presence of combustible mixture. When you say combustible mixture, what do you mean? You mean that the air fuel ratio should be within the combustible limits of that particular fuel. Okay. Second, there should be some means of initiating the combustion. You should either have a spark plug or some way of igniting. And then what does the ignition does? It just initiates. There may be conditions that if you have initiated the combustion, but there is too much of turbulence. So, what will happen? It will get extinguished, right. You must have seen that if you lit a candle and if there is too much of wind, it extinguishes. Same thing happens inside the engine also. So, the condition should be such that you should be able to stabilize the flame and propagate it. So, that means it should grow, and it should grow in a manner in which it is able to consume the entire fuel which is present in the entire combustion chamber. Okay. Only then you will be able to produce heat, otherwise it is a misfire event, it will not really give any power output. Okay. So, these are some of the necessary conditions for combustion, especially inside a spark ignition engine. Okay. So, in SI engine, combustible mixture is generally supplied by a carburetor, even today, as in the case of two-wheelers. All the two-wheelers, 80% of the vehicle population in India, whether we like it or not, is still carburetor. Okay. And combustion is initiated by an electrical spark plug, which gives a spark, and we use a spark plug for giving that spark. What is that spark? So, basically we have electrodes in a spark, and we applied very high voltage. How high voltage? It could be 20 to 35 kilovolts. How much is the voltage of this power line? 220, and now we are talking of 35,000 volts, right. So, about 150 times higher voltage. Okay. What does that high voltage do? So, whatever is this in between this small gap of the electrodes, which is about 0.5 to 0.75 millimeter, when that voltage is applied, you ionize the gas, because there is very high voltage, and ionized gas is called plasma, which is the fourth state of matter. It is very hot, it is very high temperature. So, therefore, we generate very high temperature. How high temperature? In a spark plug, close to 10,000 degrees centigrade, and how high pressure? Close to 100 bar pressure, and then that sets off the shock waves. Okay. And that actually enflames all the fuel that is available in the mixed vicinity. So, in the vicinity of the spark plug, if you have combustible mixture, you have a very small spark, energy deposition is very small. You need only 0.2 millijoule of energy in one spark for successful ignition, but the fuel which is there, because where is the spark plug located? Inside the combustion chamber. Inside the combustion chamber, you have homogeneous mixture, okay, which is in the combustible range. So, as soon as the spark is applied, and if the conditions are right, it will lead to burning of the fuel air mixture. Okay. So, we will discuss more about it, but it is just to give you background. So, a chemical equation for combustion of octane, you see whenever we say petrol, The best way to represent petrol is octane, isooctane, which is C8H18, right. So, isooctane or octane as we say it, this is the primary constituents of the gasoline, or at least we consider it that way, and we can then this octane reacts with oxygen, gives you carbon dioxide plus water. We have done all this reaction just now. So, for every mole of octane you require 12.5 moles of oxygen, and this gives you 8 moles of carbon dioxide and 9 moles of water vapor. There is 8 missing here. Okay. So, if you look at the working of the SI engine, in conventional SI engines, fuel and air are mixed together in the intake system either by using a carburetor, or if you have a car, none of the car available today uses a carburetor, all of them use what you call as MPFI system, multi-point port fuel injection system. You have a small injector which is located in the intake port, there is air coming and fuel is injected inside the port, inside the manifold, there is mixing of fuel and air. So, ultimately either a carburetor or port fuel injection system, both do the same thing, they prepare the fuel air mixture outside the cylinder. As soon as the valve open, you take the mixture in. So, basically air fuel mixture is mixed together in the intake system either by a carburetor or by a port fuel injection system. It is inducted through the intake valve into the cylinder. So, that is once the piston goes down, it sucks everything in. Okay. And then combustion is initiated towards the end of the compression stroke. You take that mixture in, it is all vapor, nothing is liquid, it is vaporized in the manifold. Then you start compressing it in the compression stroke, temperature and pressure will go up. Okay. And as soon as the temperature and pressure go up and you start reaching very close to the top dead center, you apply the spark, and when you apply the spark, what will happen? Combustion will happen. Okay. But does it happen immediately as soon as you apply the spark, or does it take some time? It does take some time. So, you apply the spark, I will show you maybe a video in the next class where you will see, in fact, I showed you in the beginning of this course one video, did not I, where you apply the spark and you see that there is nothing happening, you can't see anything, and then suddenly you see that flames have come up. Okay. So, there is a lag between the time you apply the spark and the time when you see the first visuals of flames. It seems nothing is happening, but there is a lot happening. This period is called ignition delay or ignition lag. Okay. So, the combustion is initiated towards the end of the compression stroke at the spark plug by the electrical discharge. Following the flammation, a turbulent flame develops. Okay. A turbulent flame develops, it propagates through this essentially premixed fuel, air and burnt gas mixture until it reaches the combustion chamber wall and then extinguishes. So, what happens is that you see this is the engine, this is the spark, this is the cylinder. Okay. And almost say for example, you are very close to the top dead center, things are happening when you are at the top dead center. So, more or less piston does not really move that much. You apply the spark, the combustion will happen and the flames will start coming up, and then of course, they will start propagating outward. So, this flame, what is this flame? Flame is nothing but a very thin chemical reaction zone where the chemical reaction is happening. What is that chemical reaction? It is the oxidation of fuel and air into carbon dioxide and water. It is a very thin zone, it is about 0.5 to 1 millimeter thick, that is about it. So, suppose there is a flame here, what is behind the flame? Carbon dioxide and water. What is ahead of the flame? Fuel air mixture. So, obviously, it will try to devour all the fuel that is available for it, and it is in that conditions, provided satisfy those conditions, 3 conditions that we discussed. So, it will try to move in all possible directions, and obviously, there is inside there is a lot of turbulence, right. It is not stationary condition, everything is moving very, very fast. So, therefore, it is not very smooth, that is why it is said that all this movement of this flame front is turbulent. You see here, and this starts propagating. Up to when it will propagate? So, it will keep moving. Does it go all the way to the walls? It will not go all the way to the walls. Why it will not go all the way to the walls? So, this heat is being released in this fuel, right, and heat is being lost by the walls because the walls are at a lower temperature. As long as the heat generation because of combustion is more than the heat lost through the walls, the flames will be sustained. The moment you have domination of the heat loss, flames will extinguish. When you reach very close to the cylinder walls, the heat loss increases. So, there will be a certain point about 0.5 millimeter, 1 millimeter away from the cylinder walls, where there the flames will get extinguished. It cannot go all the way to the walls. So, whatever this zone you have, it will contain fresh and pure fuel air mixture, which will not burn. Where it will go? In the exhaust, it will come out as hydrocarbon emission, and you are losing pure fuel into the atmosphere. This is one big problem. Okay? Now, so power stroke will take place, then exhaust stroke will take place, but again when you come to the exhaust stroke, the piston does not go all the way up, it goes only up to TDC. There is still some clearance volume. What it will be filled with? It will be filled with combustion gases. It will contain carbon dioxide, it will contain water vapor, it will contain nitrogen and very little oxygen if at all. So, burnt gases from the previous cycle. So, then the intake valve opens, gases, burnt gases already there, fresh air comes in, fresh fuel comes in, fuel air mixture comes in. So, in the intake stroke, what will be the constituent of the cylinder? So, constituents of the cylinder will include premixed fuel and air plus the burnt gases mixture from the previous cycle. Okay? So, it reaches, and then the flames will go very close to the combustion chamber wall, and then they will extinguish. Okay? So, is this clear how this happens? I will discuss this further. So, in SI engines, the compression ratio is limited to 8 to 10, more or less, the whole world now there is a agreement that okay 9.5 is what is sacrosanct for mediocre applications, medium load applications, for say bikes, cars, etc. Because if you increase it more than 10, what happens? It leads to knocking, and knocking limits the increase in compression. When we did the theoretical calculation, we found that thermal efficiency of a spark ignition engine is only related to compression ratio. Higher is the compression ratio, more will be the thermal efficiency. Remember when we did the analysis of the Otto cycle, okay? But here we cannot increase it infinitely because this is taught by knocking issues. So, 9.5 to 10 is what is now more or less agreed worldwide. People do not make too many vehicles outside that 9.5 range. Now, I just briefly mentioned that there is a flammability limit or ignition limit of a particular fuel air ratio. So, this is just an example. You see here, this is the air fuel ratio given on the x axis, actually it is just one axis fuel, one axis picture. So, you see if you have, this is stoichiometric, okay? This is air fuel ratio. So, air fuel ratio 14.5 or 15 is what is stoichiometrically correct. If you are on this side, you are rich. If you are on this side, you are lean. So, you see if you look at just the hydrocarbon, pure hydrocarbon, you are doing the combustion in a combustion bomb or in a chamber, you have all the time available to you. You can burn mixtures as rich as 7 and as lean as 30. Okay? But when it comes to engines, in the engine combustion is altogether a different ball game. Why? Because the time available to you is very small. The entire combustion process should get completed in some 5, 10, 15 millisecond. Okay? So, that means you do not have the luxury of time, and therefore, for all practical carbureted engines, the air fuel ratio is maximum you can go up to is 9, and on the lean side maximum you can go is 20 2021. In fact, most of the modern engines have even narrower range. They fluctuate between 12 and 18. They do not even use this entire full range which is possible. Okay. So, ignition of the charge is only possible within a certain limit of air fuel ratio. Okay. Then the hydrocarbon fuel stoichiometric air fuel ratio is about 15:1. Ignition limit for hydrocarbon fuel must therefore lie between 7 and 30. Okay. The lower and upper ignition limit of the mixture depends on the mixture ratio and also on the temperature. If you want to increase this range, you have to have very high temperature. So, if you have very high temperature, what happens? Why this ignition limit can be, why this air fuel ratio limit can be increased at higher temperature? Because at higher temperature, you will have more activation energy available for reactions to take place. So, therefore, at higher temperature, this range will widen, at lower temperature, this range will shrink. Okay. So, this depends on so many factors. So, the ignition limits are wider at increased temperature because of the higher rates of reaction and higher thermal diffusivity coefficients of the mixture. The fuel will mix very well and interact very well at higher temperature with the air. Okay. Now, you remember when we discussed about the Otto cycle for spark ignition engines, what was happening? So, you see, let us go theoretical, completely theoretical, okay, ideal cycle. What was the cycle? We compress the mixture, we go to the TDC, this is only compression stroke. The moment you apply the spark, the entire combustion chamber releases the heat in one go. So, that means the heat is released when you have constant volume, right. So, at constant volume the pressure will shoot up, and once it shoots up the combustion gets completed and then you have expansion. So, if we put a pressure transducer here and measure what is the pressure, and we put a crank angle here which will tell you where the piston is in the cycle, and that is how we make P theta diagram, P on the y axis and theta on the x axis. Okay. So, now this is 0 degree, 0 degree means my bottom dead center. I am going up, so what will happen? This is isentropic compression, so this is isentropic compression. I reach my TDC here and then suddenly all the heat is released, so suddenly my pressure goes up, and I am completely talking theoretical, do not imply any practical considerations, whole ideal, then we apply practical considerations later. So, compression, and then here you have the combustion, and because of the combustion it is a constant volume heat release, and therefore, the pressure goes up, you reach point C, all the heat is released, and then piston starts moving up, all the heat is released, no further release of the heat, only the expansion. So, the expansion happens. Okay. So, this is how it should happen in a ideal spark ignition engine. So, theoretical diagram of pressure crank angle is shown here. AB process is what? Compression process. BC process is what? Combustion process, and CD process is what? Expansion process. Okay. So, in an ideal cycle, the entire pressure rise during combustion takes place at constant volume, that means when the piston is at TDC. Okay. However, will it happen in a actual engine? Yes or no? Why it will not happen? It will not happen because, first of all, you cannot release the entire heat instantly, it takes time. It is a physical process in which reactants are interacting with each other, the fuel is getting oxidized, it is a physical process, physical combustion, physical burning process, it takes time. Okay. Then you apply the spark, you do not see the flames immediately, there is some ignition delay part also involved. So, those have to be really accounted for. Okay. So, there is a famous guy, his name was Ricardo, he is considered to be one of the father figures of IC engine development. He gave this theory of combustion which is extremely famous. It is called Ricardo's theory of combustion, which is, it dictates how the spark ignition engine works. So, he says that combustion process can be imagined as if it is developing in two stages. What are these two stages? First is growth and development of a self propagating nucleus flame. Okay. That means you apply the spark and then nothing seems to be happening, and then you see some small flame happening. But since if this is the combustion chamber and the small flames have come up in this zone, small zone, self sustainable, will you experience any pressure change here? Suppose you put your pressure transducer here, will you experience any pressure change here? The answer is no, because this heat release will be too small to change any pressure in the entire volume. Okay? So, the moment you apply the spark and the moment this picks up the pressure change, that period is called ignition delay or ignition lag. Okay? So, the first part is that you have growth and development of the self propagating nucleus flame, which is called ignition delay, and then once this has self propagating and sustained, these are stabilized, then they will start moving in all directions. That is the second phase, that is the spread of the flame throughout the combustion chamber. That is what Ricardo said long time back. Now, let us look at what happens. So, this is the theoretical figure. Let us see what happens in practical figure. So, practical figure, this is the pressure and this is the crank angle. Okay? This is the top dead center, this one here. Okay? Actually, this is slightly wrong here. This should have been like this. This is motoring diagram. Motoring diagram should actually peak at TDC. This should be slightly peaky here. What is motoring diagram? Motoring diagram is just compression and then you do not apply the spark, and so when you go up, the pressure goes up, when you come down, pressure comes down, and it has to be symmetric around TDC because there is no heat release happening. So, that is the motoring diagram. Okay. Now, you see here what you have done is you have applied the spark at say around 18 degree before top dead center. Okay. You have applied the spark, but this pressure transducer that you have put, it does not pick up anything, no change, it is still following the motoring diagram. Is anything happening here? Yes, things are happening, but you have not built enough momentum in those processes to be able to be picked up by the pressure transducer, and this is called ignition delay. So, the point A and point B, this difference, this is the first part, which is called ignition delay or ignition lag. Then you see at point B, the momentum is enough where you start seeing some pressure change, and then you see very rapid rise in the pressure. Okay. And if you look at this will be few degrees after the top dead center, this peak will be few degrees after top dead center. Okay. This is the second part of the combustion, which is called propagation of flames. By the time you reach peak, most of the charge means fuel air mixture, it has burnt, and then you have this sliding down. So, this sliding down is called third phase, which is called after burning. So, that means it is now your volume of the cylinder is increasing. So, there will be some heat release, but that heat release really does not contribute anything to the useful power output, because now your volume is going down, your pressure is also going down. Okay. So, the combustion process in an actual SI engine, it consists of three stages. First stage, which is AB, it represents the first stage, ignition delay. Second stage, BC, which is called propagation of the flames. Third stage represents after burning. At the point of the passage of the spark, which is about 18-20 degree, it is not sacrosanct, it depends on what is the engine, what is the engine size, what is the engine speed, what is the fuel you are using, but typically 18-20 degree. B point is about the point where the first rise in pressure can be seen, about 8 to 10 degrees, and C is the attainment of the peak pressure, that is how you have done, and D point is very fuzzy. There is no particular sign that you have to put it at this point. Anyway, CD is really not very relevant from energy perspective, from energy power production perspective from IC engine. Let us analyze these three phases separately. So, let us look at the first phase, okay. This first phase, this is ignition delay period. So, this is nothing but the time interval in the process of chemical reaction during which the molecules get heated up to self ignition temperature, get ignited and produce a self propagating nucleus of flame. Okay. This ignition delay is very small. Look at the time, this is of the order of 0.15 to 0.2 millisecond. Five hundredth part of a second, sorry 5,000th part of a second. So, this is a chemical process depending upon the nature of the fuel, it depends on the temperature and pressure, proportions of the exhaust gas and rate of oxidation of burning. So, all these things, how much is the fraction of the exhaust gas that is left from the previous cycle, how much is the rate of the oxidation and burning, how much is the temperature and pressure in the combustion chamber, how much is the, what is the nature of the fuel, what is the octane number of the fuel, all these are going to dictate how much will be the ignition delay. Okay. Let us look at this part 2 BC, which is nothing but propagation of flames. The flames propagate through the mixture when the rate of heat generation by burning is greater than the heat lost by the flames to the surroundings. As long as it is higher, I told you that as long as it is higher, the flames will keep propagating in the combustion chamber. The moment the heat loss start dominating, the flames will get extinguished. Starting point of the second stage is where the first measurable rise of the pressure can be seen on the indicator diagram, and in this phase about 85 to 90% of the fuel energy is released in this phase. 10% is released in third phase, but that is not of much use. Let us look at the third part CD. Afterburning continues for a very long time near the walls and behind the turbulent flame front. The surface of the flame front becomes smaller and there is a reduction in turbulence. So, suppose you have moved up to here, the flame front will still continue in this small area. So, here the turbulence will obviously be not as high as it will be in the center. So, the surface of the flame front becomes smaller and there is a reduction in the turbulence. About 10% heat is released in this phase. Okay. So, you see flame front propagates in the combustion chamber. So, when you see combustion chamber, all these things are happening say around 20 degree to about 25-30 degree. We have 720 degree cycle. What is the most active period where all the things are happening? Is it that the all 720 degree important, or it is the small fraction? It is a small fraction. You look at it, 10-15 degree before top dead center and 30-40 degree after top dead center, the is over. Rest all is garbage. It is important, but that is not the happening place, right. So, let us look at this, and you see here only 10-15 degree before top dead center, only like 20-30 degree after the top dead center. So, during this time, if you look at it, you have a crank slider mechanism here. So, the volume, does it change too much? Piston, does it move too much? It is reaching TDC. So, when it reaches TDC, it is already linear movement is reducing, its velocity is decreasing, it goes to 0, then starts picking up. So, practically speaking, this there will be very little movement during this entire phase of combustion. So, practically for all practical purposes, the volume of the cylinder does not change much. So, if we put the volume of the cylinder or the time of the flame travel across the chamber on the x axis and the distance of flame travel across the chamber on the y axis, this is the curve that we get. It is a S shaped curve. So, that what does it show? It shows first is the area 1. What was the area 1? Ignition delay period. So, that means it will take a very long time, but the distance travelled will be very small, and then you have fast travel. Okay. So, flames will be initially very slow, they will take long time to travel a small distance, then once they pick up momentum they will travel very fast up to this point, and then again they will become very slow in the third phase. So, this is shown here very clearly that from point A to point B, it is the first stage. So, that means flames are travelling slow. From point B to point C, it is very fast, and then again from point C to point D, it will be again slow. So, A B, the flame propagates relatively slowly due to low transmission rate and low turbulence. B to C, the flame front leaves the quiescent zone, because close to the spark plug you do not want to have very turbulent zone, because if you have turbulent zone, the flames will extinguish. So, this is deliberately you design such that the turbulence at close to the spark plug is relatively quiet. Okay. So, the flame front leaves the quiescent zone and proceeds into more turbulent area, and turbulence actually helps it accelerate, it helps the flames travel faster. It consumes a greater mass of the mixture and progresses more rapidly and at a constant rate. So, you can see here, and then again the part CD, the volume of the unburnt charge is very small towards the end of the flame travel. So, the transposition rate again becomes negligible, which reduces the flame speed. Let us look at rate of flame propagation. This affects the combustion in SI engines. Flame speed in the engine is somewhere between 10 to 30 meters per second, very fast, right. The factors which affect the flame speed and flame propagation, first is obviously the air fuel ratio. You will have a certain fuel air ratio where the flames will be fast, and then if you make rich or lean on both sides, the flame speed will reduce. The compression ratio is going to affect the flame speed, because compression ratio is going to affect temperature and pressure at the end of the compression, right. And then load on the engine will dictate how much fuel you are putting in. So, again it affects the air fuel ratio. Turbulence obviously, if there is more turbulence, the flame speed will be more, and we know that turbulence is affected by engine speed. If the engine is running slow, turbulence levels will be low. If the engine is running fast, the turbulence levels will be more, right. Fourth, engine size and what is the nature of the fuel, these also affect the flame propagation or flame speeds. Let us look at them in detail, more detail. Turbulence. So, turbulence increases the heat flow to the cylinder walls, it increases the flame speed, fine, but turbulence also increases the heat loss through the cylinder wall. So, turbulence in an engine is a sword which cuts both ways. It increases the flame speed, fine, but it also disturbs the stagnant air layer close to the cylinder walls, and therefore, the heat loss through the cylinder walls will also increase. So, one has to be careful when you are designing this, what kind of turbulence levels you have to design the engine for. Okay. It also accelerates the chemical reactions by intimate mixing of fuel and oxygen, so that spark advance may be reduced. It helps in burning leaner mixtures. So, if you have leaner mixtures and if you have good turbulence, you can still burn them. The increase in flame speed due to turbulence reduces combustion duration. So, if you increase the flame speed, turbulence increases the flame speed, and then you are able to run the engine faster, and this minimizes the tendency for abnormal combustion. Abnormal combustion or knocking, when does it take place in the engine? It takes place at the end of combustion. Have you experienced knocking in your when you run the motorbike? So, I will give you an example, all of you have experienced, maybe you have not noticed it, but you have experienced it. So, you run the motorbike, all of you I believe must have driven the motorbike. When you run the motorbike at 4th gear at 20 km/h, what happens? There is a very distinct metallic noise, as if there is a hammer, metal to metal striking, and that's because it is knocking. The piston is hitting the walls on the side because of knocking. So, what do? The immediate action, as soon as you hear that voice, intrinsically you change the gear. By changing the gear, what you are doing? You are actually increasing the engine speed. Okay. So, when you increase the engine speed, what are you doing? Without knowing what you are doing, you actually, when you increase the engine speed, the turbulence level inside the combustion chamber increases, that increases the flame velocity, and that avoids the knocking. Okay. That eliminates the knocking, because you are able to burn through the charge before it auto ignites. Okay. So, that is what you do. So, all of you have experienced, now you know the reason why you do what you do when you experience knocking. Okay. So, this excessive turbulence may extinguish the flames, resulting in rough and noisy operations. So, too much of turbulence is also not good, less turbulence is also not good. So, you have to basically do a very fine balancing act. Okay. Too much of turbulence will lead to engine rough running, it will also lead to increase in heat loss. Too little will give you knocking issues, too little will give you a not so high power output from the engine. Okay. So, second factor that affects the flame speed is temperature and pressure. So, flame speed increases with the increase in intake temperature and pressure obviously, because if you are increasing temperature and pressure, the diffusion reactions, the chemical reactions are faster, and therefore, the flames will also propagate faster. A higher initial pressure and temperature may help to form a better and superior homogeneous mixture, which helps in increasing the flame speed. So, the idea is that anything which increases the mixture homogeneity will also help you increase the flame speed. Inhomogeneous mixture will have less flame speeds. Okay. So, this is possible because an overall increase in the density of the charge. Engine speed. So, if you increase the engine speed, the flame speed increases linearly. Increase in engine speed increases the turbulence inside the combustion chamber, and therefore, you are also able to avoid the knocking. Fuel air ratio also affects the flame speed. Highest flame speeds are obtained with somewhat slightly richer mixture. So, slightly richer mixture than stoichiometric. Say if stoichiometric is 14.5, so something like 13.5 or 14, you will have highest flame speed. If you go on both sides, lean or rich, you will have lower flame speed. Okay. So, it is shown here. So, when the mixture is made leaner or richer, the flame speed decreases, less thermal energy is released in case of lean mixture, resulting in lower flame temperature. Very rich mixture lead to incomplete combustion, which will also lead to release in less thermal energy. And here the mixture strength is shown, this side is rich side, this side is lean side. So, even the ignition delay is affected by mixture quality. You can see that for slightly rich mixture, ignition delay is lowest. If you make it rich or lean on both sides, the delay will also increase. So, not only the flame speed, but also the ignition delay, they follow the same behavior. Okay. Next factor that affects the flame speed is compression ratio. So, a higher compression ratio, what it will do? It will increase the pressure and temperature at the end of the compression, and it will increase the pressure and temperature of the charge, and therefore, what it will do? It will increase the flame speed. Thus, the engine having higher compression ratio will naturally have higher flame speeds compared to the one which are having lower compression ratio. Engine size does not have any significant effect on the rate of flame propagation. So, flame speed remains same, but just by increasing the shear size, the flames have to travel longer distance, and they will take longer time, and therefore, the engine RPM will come down. Flame speed is not affected, but engine speed is affected. Both are different. Is that clear? So, in large engines, the time required to complete combustion is definitely more, and because of this, because the flames have to travel longer distance, and therefore, the RPM will go down. Flame speed in terms of meter per second is not affected by the engine size. Okay. The engine output. So, if you are having higher engine output, if you want to put in extract more power output from the engine, what is that you have to do? You have to increase the amount of fuel in the engine. So, when you increase the fuel quantity, the in cylinder pressure, the peak in cylinder pressure is going to increase. So, the cycle pressure increases when the engine output is increased, and when the cycle pressure increases, what happens to the flame speed? Obviously, the flame speed will increase. So, with the increased throttle opening, gas cylinder fills with a higher density, it results in increased flame speed. So, I think I will stop here, and I will continue in my next class from here onwards.